It is October of 1962. We are in the middle of the Cold War. However, one horrible event takes place. That is the the missile crisis. During the but let's go back a little bit. The Cold War was not a war in the in the in the normal use of that word, in the common use of that word, because the U.S. and the Soviet Union and the USSR never went into a total war against another. This that's the that's the reason why this name why is this name labeled to this conflict, because it was not a war. It was not a total war. It was a cold war. It was a series of aggressions in many countries. For example, in the military part, they crashed in the Korean War because the U.S. supported the South, and the Soviet Union supported the North. Also in the Vietnam War, as well as in Europe, for example, because Europe was divided, Germany was divided. So, but also on other parts, for example, in the science, in the science, the USSR was the first country that launched a rocket to the space. On the other hand, the the U.S. was the first country that sent a human to the moon. Okay, so it was also a war in the economy, because the USSR was supported, had the communism as their model. On the other hand, the US had the capitalism. Those were the two models that could not stand each other. Okay, so as we said, it is October in 1962, and some US aircrafts that were flying above the above Cuba, so watch some missiles that were setting there. These were middle and also long distance missiles, so they could attack. They could have the power to attack the U.S. if they wanted. Okay. Yes. Now, with all of this happening, uh, President Kennedy um, had a meeting with all his advisors in attempts to try to um, solve this problem. Many many options were put on the table. However, one of the most one of the worst of them was that they might should invade Cuba, and also crashed into a total war with the USSR. However, thankfully, the White House and the Kremlin had some meetings and also some phone calls between both presidents, in on which they they agreed to not to go into a war, in exchange of the U.S. to remove their Neptune missiles from Turkey. Okay, so the U.S. would remove their missiles from Turkey, and the USSR would remove their missiles from Cuba. Okay. Now, but before all of this happened, the U.S. had a very interesting strategy, they made uh, they made a blockade. In fact, it was a blockade. However, they labeled it as a quarantine for Cuba, so they would not let any any you any Soviet ship carrying weapons to get into Cuba. Okay, so but with that phone call between both presidents, between both houses, the White House and the Kremlin, they agreed to stop the nuclear war, and this was a very historical moment because both noticed the risks that this nuclear war could have on the humankind.